and welcome back to Ashley Main Makes. So today I thought I would share with you a new brand that has recently been expanded into plus size called Twig and Tale. Now this is a brand out of New Zealand and I thought I would share it with you guys because it has a lot of like whimsical cottagecore details to it that I thought most of you would really enjoy. And like I say, it's been recently expanded into plus size. I had signed up to be part of their sew and show team. Now this is a little bit different than being like a pattern tester in that the pattern was actually already finalized by the time I got my hands on it. There was a couple of details changed just based on like the amount of feedback they got. But for the most part, like the drafting was finished, and so I thought it would give me a good idea of like how the patterns were, what the company was like, all those kinds of things. And honestly, I was really pleasantly surprised, and so that's why I'm making this video. I wasn't being paid or anything. This is just like totally my opinion, and I just thought I would share it with you guys and share the couple of blouses that I made because, like I say, overall I was really impressed with the drafting and the instructions and just some of the different things that they're doing, and so I thought it would be worth sharing with you guys. Now, I made two blouses as part of the show and sew team. I've made the Vista top and the sleeve add-on that works for both the Vista and the Scenic. That's the other one. The Vista and the Scenic. This whole add-on pack of sleeves will work for all of them. I actually think this is really great because if you make this basic what is essentially like a t-shirt pattern, like a woven t-shirt, and all these sleeves, you definitely could build up a whole bunch of different tops. It was really fast to sew up. It only took me, you know, like a couple of evenings of really putting my mind to it because of course I was running behind because I'm me. And I had, you know, I had tops. So if you were looking for like something nice to pump out a bunch of blouses for you for work or something like that, I think this would be a really great place to start. So I thought I would go ahead and just show you what I'm talking about instead of talking at your face. But here's the Twig and Tale website. And they're just showing off their children's patterns and their gender neutrality. So that was another thing I really enjoyed about these patterns, and the reason I thought I would share them is they've really taken a good stab at trying to use gender inclusive language, which you don't see very often just because it is kind of a difficult thing to do, honestly, in sewing. So that was something that was super nice to see, and they've really taken it to heart and across the board. So here's their kind of plus size offerings. They have included a couple of coats, which is always great to see, and that Fable dress, which is now on my list of things to make. So let me know if you want to see that. And here's the Vista top. So this is the first one I made. And as you can see, it is basically just, like I say, a woven t-shirt. Nice neat v-neck and a couple of different options for balloon sleeves, which is kind of fun. Just elastic around the wrist there. Showing off their video tutorials. And there's the size chart, which we'll get into in a minute. So yes, there's a couple of views, so a longer sleeve and a shorter sleeve, straight hem, curved hem, so pretty basic and straightforward for the stock standard pattern as is. Another really cool thing that they're doing in terms of gender neutrality is they offer what they're calling adaptive patterns, which is a flat front piece, which is really cool to see, again, for post-mastectomy or just persons without boobs, which is nice that there's just like a whole other pattern piece already done for you. So again, really taking that to heart, so it's a nice thing to see. So here's that sleeve add-on. So there's 6 different options for sleeves so that you could switch up that Vista top and kind of some different ones, including that funky lantern sleeve, which I really liked. I'll probably make that one when it's like not 1,000 degrees outside. But yeah, quite a lot of options, and there's the Scenic and the Vista options for it, and they show you that there's a bunch of different bonus resources there, like bicep adjustments, and they do also include a bunch of those with the main Vista top, like a small bust adjustment or a full bust adjustment, and show you all how to do that all in the instructions or have links to it. Here's some of that whimsical stuff I was talking about. So they have even like adult dragon wings, which is really a lot of fun. I want to see somebody make those. Some things for the masculine people in your life, and a bunch of kind of like outdoorsy stuff because of course they're in New Zealand. And embroidery. These were so adorable, and one day I will learn how to do that, but today is not that day, and so we're going to show you some sewing. So here's the instructions. I'm not going to show too much of this because obviously this is like kind of what you pay for, but I thought I would just show it because This is a big factor in me whether I like a pattern or not. So here's the size chart. There is quite a good overlap between the B cup sizes and the D cup sizes, like regular versus plus size drafting. Another really nice thing that they include is the high bust measurements, so it really takes the guesswork out of doing a full bust adjustment. I did my full bust adjustment for this, and honestly was bang on the first time because I knew straight from the size chart where I needed to be, so that made it really easy and kind of took the guesswork out, so I do really appreciate that and wish more brands would do that. Another really cool thing about these instructions is they're hyperlinked, so all those kind of greenish numbers link up to where you need to be in the instructions, which is really cool. So if you're working on PDF, it'll jump right to the section you need, which as a person that's been sewing a lot, that's really nice because I only generally need specific portions of the instructions, not the whole thing. So that made them nice and easy to follow, even though they're pictures. So as you can see, we're jumping ahead here. I am going ahead and cutting out. You can see that I did do that full bust adjustment on there for me, which, like I say, worked out perfect. So I did make a mock-up for this, which is kind of unlike me, and it worked out okay. So, you know, it's a rarity. So I'm just doing a little bit of stay stitching here along that neckline, making sure that it doesn't stretch out on me as I'm getting that facing and everything on, which is kind of an important step to do because all of that's going to be on the bias. Don't skip that step. And I'm sewing in my gigantic dart. When I go to do the next one, I'll actually trim this one down and serge it on the inside so that I don't have nearly as large of a dart, because this is quite a substantial dart on me considering there's only the one. So I'm just going to tie that off. This is a nice way to not get any puckers at the end of your darts. I have lots of questions about that always. So I'm going to be serging all the edges of all my pieces because I'm working in linen. And I just thought for this one, since again I didn't make a mock-up, that it would be a lot easier to adjust if it was kind of pre-serged. So this was the route I took on both of the ones that I did. This trick I got a lot of comments on last time I did it. So all I'm doing is putting my facing and my interfacing right side to right side and pinning them together. And I'll be sewing them here before I actually iron them together. So in this way, this gives you a really smooth finished edge instead of having a raw edge on your facing, which I find really nice, kind of a good way to finishing it off. And you can always top stitch this after the fact if you really want. I'm going to be sewing this down later, so I'm going to skip that step. But yeah, it gives you a really nice clean inside to your facing. So I'm just clipping that corner and really pushing it out and really making sure it's turned out nice and evenly all the way around. It's a little bit tricky with the interfacing sticking to itself. And you want to sew this as a pretty small seam allowance, so I've got like a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way along here. And then I'll just iron that on. So that way, again, it gives me a really nice smooth edge, and it'll be nice and clean. And I'll have no raw edges sticking out, and it eliminates me trying to pink linen or do something like that. So again, was a really good option for this. I don't know where I picked this trick up, but it's one of my favorites for sure. There you go. Nice clean facing. Now I'm going to iron that dart really well over my tailor's ham here. Again, important step not to skip it. This will ensure that you have no puckers at the end of those darts. And you're like, why does it matter now? It just does. It kind of remembers being ironed. So it's important to iron as you do things when you're sewing stuff together. Just trust me. So here I am sewing that front facing onto the front of my shirt. This one has a little bit of a different garment construction where you've got a facing on the front and a binding on the back, which was one of the things that I disliked about this pattern. So if we're going to talk negatives here. So that was one of my big dislikes with this pattern. I don't know why I used switch techniques. I did use some purchase bias binding for the back since I had a bunch left over still from the walkway dress. We'll be using that until the end of time, I'm pretty sure. And here I am just clipping the point of my facing, and I'll be clipping this all the way along because it is like a slight curve, and because you've got that interfacing in there, it does get a little bit bulky for ironing and turning it out like I am here. So I'm going to be pressing the seam allowance towards my facing, and I will be stitching that down, doing a little bit of understitching all the way along here, which I am doing right now. So you can see I'm kind of holding my hands apart and using kind of my hands to spread the facing out so that everything is really flat as I can get it. And then I'm swooping around that corner there, doing a little bit of lift and spin, and then continuing on, understitching all the way along. So here we get into a bit of weirdness. This is the tricky portion of this pattern that I had quite a bit of difficulty with, that you can see me flap to in the instructions. So what you're supposed to do is fold both pieces back and turn them on to each other. I did figure it out in the end, but with the linen and the interfacing and everything, I found it really bulky. Again, not my favorite technique. Some people got some really smooth, nice results. I think if you were making it out of, say, like a rayon challis or something, it would be doable. This was just a little bit too much, even in this lightweight linen, so not my favorite. I ended up just sewing them together, as you saw, and spreading it out. That ended up being the solution I came out with, but it leaves a loose edge, which I wasn't thrilled with. So, you know, you do you. It's one of the things I did correct on my second version. And since I have the bias tape and since I have so much of it, I did decide to go around my hem with the bias as well, just because it is a curved hem. So that's a really easy way to do it. So here's my final version. And honestly, I'm really happy with it. I didn't really adjust anything, as you saw, other than literally did the math for my full bust adjustment. So the fact that it fits this well, especially in the shoulder in a plus size pattern, is mind-boggling to me, so I thought that's why I would share it. So it came together really easy and looks pretty much exactly like the packet. The main feedback I did have was the neckline is a little close than it looks on the pattern, but I did talk to the drafter, and basically I just have a big neck, which is, you know, not news, but I will adjust that on my second one as well, along with that facing. So we're jumping on ahead here to the next version. And so I'm just starting off with making my own bias tape out of the fabric, some self fabric bias tape, since I know I'm going to need it. And just sewing all those strips together along with my neckline facing here. So I did decide to go ahead and just draft a back neck facing as well. All I did was basically trace the back neckline and measure how thick the front one was and match it, since I'm still not sure what the reasoning is on having a front facing and then the back bias tape. I really wasn't a fan, so that's one of the major changes I made to this pattern on my second version. And honestly, I was really happy with it, so I still don't quite understand the logic, but one of my major complaints about this pattern. So you can see that there. So I'm just going to iron out those seams to get started with, and we're going to do that same little trick that I showed you on the last one. This one might be slightly harder to see because it's on the white. I'm sorry guys, I didn't realize when I was doing this. So I'm going to take that, and then it's doing the same thing. I sewed up my front and back of my interfacing, and now I'm just going to pin the two together so that we're going to make a little sandwich, right side to right side, and just pin it together. It's a little bit difficult, I know, with the glue in there, but it's all going to be worth it in the end. And I'm going to be sewing this again at a 1/4 inch. You don't want a ton in there. Obviously, like, you're ending up with a little bit of bulk, so if you're working for heavier fabrics, this trick isn't the way. But for lightweight fabrics like this with lightweight interfacing, this works out just brilliant. And of course, you wouldn't even have to use technically iron-on if you wanted to use this trick. You could just use some lighter weight cotton or something like that you have for your facing instead. So that's always an option. So again, just cruising around 1/4 inch all the way around. So you're going to see instead I have a loop. One of the reasoning that might have been for having the front and the back is some people get some stretching when they do a loop like this, but so that's the only thing I can think of, is maybe it was like an ease of application thing, so people still ended with a smooth neckline. I'm not sure. That's really the only reason I can think of, but I did like the look of having it an even width all the way around, because that way they have you top stitch it down, so then you have even top stitching all the way around the neckline too. It's the little things. So yeah, so repeating that same process, I'm just turning this out, making sure it's all nice and smooth, all the way turned out. This was a little bit tricky because it was kind of sticking to itself on this one for some reason. And I'm just making sure I roll out all those edges as far as they can go, that there's nothing tucked underneath there, and then I'll iron it in, which would be kind of bad. So just kind of using my fingers to get in there. So I'm just ironing it nice and smooth all the way around, which again gives you that beautiful crisp edge, and all your raw seam allowances are all nicely enclosed and gives you a perfect round neckline, which is what I like. So nice smooth V there. And here is the neckline of my shirt. As you can see, I've already sewn up my shoulder sleeves. I am jumping around a little bit since I did just show you the construction of this already, and honestly this is a pretty straightforward beginner project, so I'm just going to go ahead and pin my facing all the way around my neckline here. I did mention here I did lower the neckline as well. I did lower it a few inches to basically where the smaller sizes are on the pattern. So, and I think that turned out great. It looks a lot more like what it does in the technical drawings than on me with my apparently large neck. This is something you might want to check when you go to make this pattern, if like your neck size matches up with the neckline if you like it. This is pretty normal adjustment for me to widen a neckline, so this is a me problem, not a drafting problem, as we've determined. So good to notice. And honestly, I'm super happy with the shape of this neckline. I do really like this V. I think it's really pretty. So I'm just going to jump on over to the machine and sew that facing down to my neckline. I'm doing this where it's flat, so well before I've got the sleeves in here. I think this is the easiest way to do it to prevent that stretching out that I was talking about earlier. So I'm just going to come right to that corner. Maybe. Coming right to the corner eventually, someday. There we go. So now I'm going to plant my corner down, and then we're going to do a lift and spin of the presser foot, and then keep cruising around all the way around the other side. I believe at a 1/4 inch here. I could be wrong. Just double checking that. But that way it gives us a nice, even, smooth neckline all the way around. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the top stitching. Same fell swoop, and again, way before I've got my sleeves in here. And this will prevent you from having that kind of ripply neckline. I actually think facings are a lot easier to not have your neckline stretch out versus something like a bias binding. Bias binding probably wouldn't be my favorite for a beginner. Doing a facing like this where it's top stitched down definitely would be. I think it's a lot easier. And by that same token, here I am doing my bias binding on the hem, which is basically a facing. So I've ironed down my top side here, and then I'm just sewing this onto my hemline. I'm doing the curved hem again, which I'll show you in the photos. And bias is really good for that, because then that way you don't have to worry about trying to iron in a smooth hem. That is what the instructions tell you to do. I am clearly ignoring that. If you were doing a straight hem, I would definitely say that's fine. But in this case, to get a nice, smooth, even, curved hem, this is the way I would recommend to doing it. And I did put on a little bit of a thicker one here just because this fabric is like a little bit sheer. So you can kind of see the facings through it. So I thought it would be a nice detail. And again, I'm doing this well before I sew up my side seams here to kind of prep it for that. So you'll just sew it all the way through, and it's kind of pre-ironed and ready to go. So this makes it super easy to get a nice, crisp, sharp hemline here. So I'm just ironing that out. Ironing that, and you can see how that already wants to curve along there. So it just makes it really easy to get a nice, clean hem on this. So flipping the facing on over to the wrong side, I'm just making sure everything is nice and smooth here, and that there's no, again, folds or tucks in that facing. And just making sure my raw edge is all nice and turned under there. And you can start to see how smooth this is going to be. This is definitely my preferred way of handling a curved hem. Even though it seems like extra steps, I honestly think it is easier in the long run and gives you a nicer result than trying to just turn this yourself. But here's the final result. And honestly, I'm super happy with it. This is a great example of an kind of tweaking details in an iterative process like this. And there it is untucked, so you can see that lovely curved hemline along with that facing. And I just love the amount of ease that this top has. I think it's pretty much perfect, so I could wear it either tucked or untucked. And I also did that same bias facing technique along the sleeves as well, so I think it helps hold them out and give them a little bit of volume so that I've got a nice twirly skirt and a nice twirly sleeve in this very hot, humid Austin weather. And I think it's amazing. So I will definitely be making some more versions of these with the different sleeves. So let me know what you'd like to see and if there's any other twig and tail patterns you'd like to see, because I will definitely be making some. So I hope you guys really enjoyed kind of seeing a little bit of my process. Let me know if this style is something that is up you guys' alley. If you enjoy kind of the style of this, I'd be really curious to know. And please do hit that like and subscribe button down below. It really does help me out and helps the channel grow. And so thank you very much. And I have lots of cute, fun fall projects coming up that I am very excited about. So I hope you guys will stay tuned and I will see you on the next one. Bye guys!